Hi, I'm Nick at Sideview, and this is Cooking with Sideview, Episode 6. Today we're going to talk about the Splunk View XML, also known as the Advanced XML. And I'm going to try and demystify it and show you the sort of simple principles. I like that, the sort of simple principles. I'm going to show you the simple principles by which the View XML works. The main problem with the View XML is that it's XML, and when you see XML and you're primed to think user interface, you would immediately assume layout. You would assume that the main job of the page, the main job of the file is to control the layout. That's actually not the main job. The main job is the functional wiring of how the modules interact with each other and talk to each other. All of the layout is actually carried by these funny little layout panel attributes. I don't even want to talk about the layout panel attributes. So let's just assume that they're not there. Then the page is just laying itself out dumbly, top down, which often is the case. So the hierarchy is everything. In context of reading the XML file, the hierarchy means module tags being contained inside other module tags. In the context of using the Sideview editor, hierarchy means the little funny wire diagram up here that shows modules being wired up to other modules top to bottom. Whichever representation you're dealing with, be it the editor or the XML, ultimately some modules are nested inside other modules. Now I'm just going to define some terms. Let's, instead of saying nested inside or above and below, let's call it downstream and upstream. So therefore, this pager module is downstream from this search module. Why? Well, because if you look, the closing tag for this search module is down here. Okay, so then here's our search module. And that means the search module has downstream from it a pager, and the pager module has downstream from it this table. From the table's point of view, it's just hanging out by itself down here. It has pager upstream, and it has search upstream, and it has button upstream from that. Okay. Next definition, a push. We define a push as, you see this says start pushing data to the downstream modules. Well, notice when I click it, the page kind of resets and everybody reruns. So what I did there is I started a cascading push from this module, and button told the module beneath it, hey, here's new data, go do your thing. Likewise, the search module told the pager downstream, hey, here's new data, go do your thing. And they all just cascade down from upstream to downstream. Okay, that's it for definitions. No, that's not really true. I'll do one more. But there's a principle of the advanced XML that is hard to get at first, and that is that the modules have no idea that there are other modules in the world. Each one of them thinks that they're kind of alone. And they can only communicate downstream, and they can only communicate through their data. So what the button actually does is just start a push. And it may or may not send keys down to in the data that it sends downstream. And then the search module just receives this data from upstream. It has no idea where it came from. It can look inside that data and do things. Likewise, when the pager module receives data from the search module, it can look inside and it can do things, but it doesn't know that it doesn't know where it came from, and it doesn't know where its data goes to when it pushes it downstream. The fundamental unit of modules communicating with each other, and remember that's only downstream, is commonly called a food token, at least in Sideview utils speak. And you often see those in search modules, and they often look like this, and it's basically specifying that at runtime, this part of this param, in this case it's a search param, this part of this param should be substituted with whatever the upstream modules have said the foo key should be in our data. You might have all kinds of stuff here. You might have seen in drill down config, for examples. This would denote the username field from a clicked upon row in a table, etc., etc. Okay, so foo token foo token was one more definition. I said we were done, but we weren't. The next thing you have to realize, and this is a hard one, is that modules do not kick off searches. Pretty much everyone begins using this XML system thinking that the search module, and its older cousin hidden search, that the search module must know how to dispatch searches. It can't do it. It has no idea how to do it. It's the framework itself that does it. Once you understand this, you'll keep away from a bunch of strange pitfalls. What happens is the framework sees the data passing from module to module. It sees the data passing from the button to the search. It sees the data passing from the search to the pager. It pays close attention to when it's about to give data to a level of modules where the receiver of the data actually needs a search to be running. So the pager module does need a search to be running. You can work this out for yourself by asking yourself, is that module able to do its job if there are no search results, if there is no job running? And in the case of the pager, well, pager has to draw these little, 1, 2, and next links. If it doesn't know how many results there are, then it can't do its job. So you can safely conclude that pager is, and you're ready for it, here's one more definition, a quote-unquote dispatching module. I know it's a confusing term, but that's basically what they've always been called, so I'm not going to break with convention. I said modules don't dispatch searches, and here I am defining a term called dispatching module. So the presence of the module in a certain position in the hierarchy causes the framework to dispatch the search, but the search module doesn't actually do it. If I had, for instance, some more in a more complicated view, this can be a more valuable insight to have, to know exactly where the search is being kicked off. But in this view, it's being kicked off when the data is passing from the search module to the pager module. Okay, now, so searches are dispatched just by these pushes moving downstream. Well, what if there was no button here? What if the page loaded and I'm not here clicking this button? Well, that is where something called auto run kicks in. You will often have seen these little auto run equals true attributes in Splunk View XML. Because people often assume that the search module is what kicks off the searches, you often see auto run put on a search module. This is a mistake. It often works just fine, but it's confusing, and it can lead to a very dangerous thing where you have many auto run equals true attributes, which is very bad. Never ever do that. The framework tries very hard to prevent the catastrophe that you're trying to cause, but it's just much easier if you do not cause the catastrophe. If you picture 17 auto run equals true attributes being in a view, picture yourself inserting 17 green buttons at those points and then clicking all 17 of them at exactly the same point. You're causing a little storm of pushes to happen, and the framework has to deal with it. So anyway, long story short, keep these up at the top of the view and keep them basically one per view. I'm going to quickly demo that it does in fact work by replacing the button module with a URL loader module. And I'm going to refresh this view. And you're going to see that, I'm not kidding, now there's no button for me to click, but still the push comes through, the search gets dispatched, the pager renders links, and the table renders a table. So that was all just virtue of auto run equals true. Likewise, if I take auto run equals true away, why would I do that? I don't know. It's a weird thing to do. Now the page is dead because it's just sitting there. It's waiting for a push that's never ever going to come. Let me put it back. Okay, now our push is back. That's actually kind of it. You've learned the really unintuitive parts of the framework. It's not about layout. You've learned what a push is. You've learned what downstream and upstream modules are. You've learned that modules haven't the faintest idea that there are other modules in the universe, much less where they are, whether they're upstream or downstream. They only communicate through data. They all communicate through foo tokens. And you learned what causes searches to be magically dispatched, and it is not the search module. By the way, just for fun, so the pager, when I click page 2, well, the table knows somehow to go to page 1 or page 2, right? So what's the only way that they can talk to each other? Okay, they can only talk downstream. So pager can only talk to table. Table cannot talk to pager, all right? Pager tells the table what page to go to, and that is basically a combination of these two keys, results.offset and results.count. Those are the keys that pager writes into the world. I'm just typing it in here. It doesn't mean anything to type it in. I'm just showing you. But let's just throw it in here. Why not? Let's throw an HTML module in. We're going to put some HTML that says offset is results.offset and count is results.count. Yes, I know I can type XML kind of fast. Don't hate me. And now click the fresh maker, reload from disk. Now our view is all nice and reloaded. Here is my little message. Offset is 0 and count is 18. That's the pager telling the table what page it should go to. If we go to page 2, now offset is 10 and count is 18. Huh. These two numbers are the only thing that the table knows about the pager in the world. There is no pager for the table. There's just those two numbers. So now you should be able to now understand how quite complex wiring really boils down to often extremely simple food tokens being passed around. They only talk downstream, only through their data, only through tokens. That's it. Again, if you want to come back and sort of take a refresher and take the full version, come back to the Sideview Utils app, get the latest, because the latest is 3.2.2 or something right now. And under Key Techniques, you'll see overview of the advanced XML. And read it. It'll go through all this in greater detail. That's it. Thanks for watching, and check back for more episodes. Take care.